We do not rise to the level of the goal. We fall to the level of the system we live in. If you relive yesterday, exactly the same, not changing a single detail. One more time, then one more time, then repeat 365 times, where will you get? The question is not asked to inspire but to reveal the truth. We don't live our lives by single moments of enlightenment, but by small actions repeated so often that we don't even notice. Some people wake up and drink a glass of water. Someone else is holding the phone. Some people sit up straight and write down 3 things they need to do that day. Some people check their email and then drift off with the news. Then drift off into something else. Not clear anymore. It's all habit. No behavior is random. Even procrastination, distraction, and even the fatigue in our chest are the result of micro-choices that we repeat so often we forget we made them. So if we want to change, where do we start? Not at the height of ambition, where goals are written on a board like a manifesto. Not in the deepest emotional depths where we panic at the sight of our lives slipping away, but in a small, unseen place. The hidden system that controls everyday behavior. Because when the system is wrong, every effort becomes against oneself. And when the system is right, good behavior happens almost effortlessly. This book Hobbies does not promise that you will become the best version of yourself in 21 days. It doesn't call you a warrior or a potential winner. It just shows you one very simple thing. Habit is the technology that operates identity. If you want to live as a disciplined person, you don't need to force yourself every morning. You need to design a system that makes the right behavior happen naturally. And if you're stuck in an old loop, what you need isn't new inspiration, but a new behavioral architecture. This is not a book to read and be changed. It is a book that helps you restructure yourself in a quiet but radical way. It doesn't tell you to try harder, it asks you a more dangerous question. Is the system you live in making you the person you want to be? If not, maybe it's time to stop questioning what you want and start asking what you've been repeating every day without even realizing it. And from that question, maybe a new system will begin. We encourage listeners to buy and read the book to fully experience its content. Because only when you read the whole book will you understand the nature of the problem you are listening to me talk about. Now let's start with me summarizing this book. Demons. The basic principles. I used to think I was a mediocre person when you got your face broken. Taken to hospital by helicopter, had a seizure and fell into a coma just because of standing in the wrong position on the soccer field. Life gives you plenty of time to think things over. I don't remember the moment the stick hit my face. But I remember clearly every day after that. Every pain, every hopeless attempt to recover, every time standing in front of the mirror looking at a distorted face that I didn't recognize. I learned to start over, to breathe, to walk, to see without seeing everything in double. Those days had no grand goals, no grand ambitions, just one recurring question: how to make tomorrow a little better than today. When you have nothing, you start small. I go to bed early, make my bed, and rewrite my notes after class. No one cheered me on for those things. No one took pictures to post online. No one told me to try. But little by little the strange thing happened. Those little habits start to add up to something powerful. I got perfect score in my first year of college. In my second year, I joined the football team. In my third year I was elected team captain. In his fourth year, he became the school's best male athlete and received a Medal of Honor from the school president. That sounds impressive. But I'm not telling this to brag, I'm telling this because it all started with just one blanket folding. After I woke up, I lived fully the truth that I later called the surprising power of atomic habit. The world loves a good rags to riches, fat to model, unknown to legend story. But real life is not like that. Most revolutionary changes start with something trivial. It doesn't have the crisp sound of a firecracker, nor the bright light of a fireworks. It starts the same way ice melts. You look at the ice cube on the table, the temperature increases 1 degree at a time, from 25 degrees Celsius to 31 degrees Celsius, nothing happens. You think nothing will change. Then at the 32nd degree, the ice cube uses itself, the first drop falls, the transformation always takes place in silence, in the so-called latent plateau, where you don't see any results appearing. But it's all quietly adding up when you finally see results. They call it a breakthrough. But you know it's the result of hundreds of small actions repeated in the dark. We don't win because of one great moment. We win because we win 1% every day. That is the essence of atomic habit. Atomic habits. The atom is the smallest, indivisible unit, but it is also what makes up the entire physical world. So, one small change, if done right, can change the trajectory of your entire life. Imagine, if you improve just 1% every day for 1 year, you're not just a little better, you're 37 times better. But if you get 1% worse every day, after a year you're almost gone. And the strange thing is that no one notices the gradual decline and no one sees you going up until you become someone else. Habits are like compound interest. The bad thing is that good things accumulate very slowly and bad things fall apart very quickly. You eat healthy for 3 days and no one notices. You have a bad meal one night, your weight skyrockets, your stomach bloats, your head feels heavy as a rock. But life is decided by those little things, not by a sudden moment of sublimation. If you lived the same way today for the next 10 years, where would you be? You don't need to look into the future, just look at the trajectory you are on. Habits are the trajectory, results are just the destination. Your money is the cumulative result of your financial habits. Your body is a reflection of your eating and exercise habits. Knowledge, you are the result of learning habits. Your career reflects your work habits. Your happiness is a product of your thinking and relationships. Someone asked me, how to become the best version of myself. I said stop looking at the destination. Look at the system you are running every day. A team doesn't win championships by staring at the scoreboard. An entrepreneur does not succeed by keeping his eyes fixed on revenue targets. You don't become wise just by reading 30 books a year. Success is not about the destination, it is about the journey you create. The system that you repeat every day. And that system always goes in a sequence. I call it the 4-step habit loop. 1. Signal stick. Something happens that catches your attention. For example, mobile phone. 2. Longings. You want a certain feeling. For example, know who is texting. 3. Reaction. You take action. For example, open the computer and see. 4. Reward. Award. You feel happy, curiosity satisfied, dopamine flowing. This is a closed-loop machine, the self-reinforcing cycle becomes more and more automatic as it repeats itself. You are less aware of what you are doing. We still think we control our behavior. Behavior operates as a reflex that is learned over time. That is why many people fail when they try to change. They try to fix the results but don't touch the root cause. They want to be thinner, richer, happier but not change the system they are born into. It's like you clean a messy room, you finish cleaning it, 3 days later it's the same again, you clean the result but don't change the habit of accumulating things you want to change in the long term. Fix the system and a good system. Starting with how you see yourself, most people start off on the wrong foot. They focus on what they want to achieve. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to read 30 books. That is the outcome goal. Then they start planning their actions, dieting, making study schedules, going to ZM room. That is the process level. But what makes things sustainable lies in the deepest third layer. Personal identity. Who do you believe you are? People say I'm trying to quit, trying to change my behavior but still believe I'm a smoker. The person who said I don't smoke has redefined himself. Every action is a vote for who you want to become. Every time you read a book, you are voting for me as a learner. Every time you come to ZM room, you reinforce my belief that I am a healthy and disciplined person. You do not act on purpose. You act to live up to your image. If you want lasting change, start with a simple question. Who do I want to be? I used to think I was a person who couldn't write. In high school, my teachers gave me average, and sometimes negative, marks, but once I started sitting down, typing every day, writing 2 articles a week, month after month, I gradually stopped thinking of myself as a bad writer. I began to believe I was a writer and I lived by that belief. You don't need a big milestone to establish your identity. Just one small enough action repeated often enough. That's how every identity is built. Repeated behavior becomes evidence of belief. You don't need to be right 100% of the time, just a majority of votes, just over 50%. You act more like a reader than a non-reader. You choose to walk instead of being more sedentary than yesterday. You act like a calm person instead of being grumpy like your old habit. And slowly you become the version you choose. If every behavior starts from a cue to a craving to a response to a reward, then we can reprogram the system. If you want to form a good habit, make it explicit. 2 attractive, 3 easy to do. 4. Satisfaction. I call these the 4 laws of behavior change. If you want to create a habit, make the cue noticeable, the action compelling, easy to do, and then the reward stimulating enough. If you want to break a bad habit, reverse it, make the signal less attractive, increase the difficulty, and make the result unpleasant. It's not as simple as flipping a switch. But it's a framework I've tried, lived with, and helped thousands of people rebuild their lives. In the following, I will share with you each law in detail, not just in theory but also in practical examples, where seemingly ordinary people have used habits to create something extraordinary. But before you get into it, remember you don't become great just because of a moment. You become great because you do the little things, over and over again, until no one doubts you. And every time you doubt whether you can change, just ask yourself, will I cast one more vote today for the person I want to become? Just one vote is enough. Law 1, make it obvious, makes the habit obvious. I am not a doctor, nor a priest, a hypnotist, or a magician. But something happened that made me believe that humans have the ability to perceive abnormalities that they themselves cannot explain. That's when a nurse at a Canadian hospital walked into the room, glanced at the man lying there breathing evenly, and stopped. He was alert, talking normally, his skin wasn't pale, his blood pressure was stable, but the nurse felt something was wrong. A nagging feeling. She left the room to call the doctor on duty. Doctor asked if there were any specific signs. She shook her head, there was just something strange. They took the patient to the emergency room. Minutes later, he went into septic shock and would have died if not treated promptly. The doctor himself said that the nurse couldn't explain it, but her subconscious had synthesized microsignals, skin moisture, breathing, nail color, movement rhythm, everything was warning, just too subtle for the conscious mind to recognize. It is a perfect example of an invisible signal. We live in a world flooded with signals of all kinds, sounds, smells, images, and sensations, most of which are ignored, but some will pass through the filter wall of perception, hit a trigger point in the brain, and turn into behavior. If you want to change a habit, start by making the signal so clear that it can't be ignored. Behavior initiated by a signal. If you don't recognize that signal or let it pass you by, you will continue living in your old habits. You open the fridge and pull out a can of soda just because it's right in sight. You pick up your phone as soon as you open your eyes because it's next to your pillow. We don't choose the best habits. We choose what is most obvious, most visible, most convenient. You eat not just because you are hungry but because of what is in your cupboard. You smoke not only because you are addicted but because someone else just smoked in front of you. You surf the net not just for entertainment but because the Facebook icon lights up every 3 minutes. I used to think to change behavior, you need more motivation. But after thousands of interviews, I realized a disturbing truth. You don't need motivation. You need a different environment. The Japanese have a term called miru, which means to see. What don't you see? You don't think about what is so clearly present that it controls your behavior without you realizing it. If you leave a bowl of apples on the table, you eat more apples. If you keep candy in a hidden drawer, you eat less. If the book is right next to your bed, you read more. If your desk is clean and you have a notebook handy, you write more. A small change in physical layout can lead to a big change in behavior, in psychology called implementation intention. Instead of talking vaguely, I will exercise regularly. You would say I will exercise at 6 a.m. every Monday at the park near my house. By specifying when and where, you turn your intention into a clear signal, like drawing a line in your mind. At that point, the body will react without hesitation. I have tested this with hundreds of people. Those who just say I will try to exercise. The success rate is very low, but whoever writes it down, I will act on it at the time and place. Behavior retention rates skyrocketed nearly 23 times. Why? Because they don't let behavior float in the gray area. They pinned it down to reality with concrete promises. A form of silent commitment that the brain remembers as truth. And then I realized there's one more step that's even more powerful than habit grafting. Instead of trying to add a new habit from scratch, you tie it into an existing routine. For example, after making coffee in the morning, I will meditate for a minute. After brushing my teeth, I will read a page of a book. After hanging up my coat, I will write a sentence in my diary. After closing the computer, I will hug my child for 10 seconds. Old habits act as hooks, an anchor to which new behaviors can be attached. You don't need to create it completely from scratch. You just need to take advantage of the existing chain of behaviors, the more specific the behavior. The closer to your reality, the more likely it is to last. I once helped a client get into the habit of drinking water regularly every morning in a very simple way. He left the water jug right next to the table. So every morning when I brush my teeth, the behavior is already there. He sees the water bottle and the new drinking behavior occurs immediately after. No alarm clock, no reminders, just a clear, visible, memorable sign that connects with the flow of everyday life. A good environment doesn't make you remember, it makes you unforgettable. But it's not just physical, you can design social environments where every signal from another person becomes a catalyst. When I wrote this book, I joined a group of writers who wrote every day. We don't need to cheer each other up with slogans, just know that others are working, they don't brag, they just write. And so I wrote. Humans are imitative creatures. We learn to smoke, love, spend money, behave, be jealous. It all comes from observing others, especially those we consider close, similar, or admire. Choose the person you want to be and then find ways to get closer to them. If you live in an apartment full of lazy people, you will gradually drift along with that pace of life. If you walk into a room full of people reading, you'll find it hard to stay on your phone for more than 5 minutes. Environment is not just where you live, environment is where habits are programmed. And finally, there's a secret that most self-discipline training courses never tell. You don't need that much self-control. Sounds paradoxical, right? Imagine two people both want to lose weight. Someone always keeps candy in the kitchen. Opened the fridge to find soda, the desk was full of snacks, the other person didn't buy any sweets. Who do you think needs more self-control? Obviously the first, but is it willpower or simply bad environmental design? The more you have to resist temptation, the more willpower you expend, and willpower is finite. It diminishes with every decision, every inner conflict. Every time have to remind myself not to. That's why successful people are not stronger. They just have to make fewer difficult decisions because they have programmed their environment to the point where good behavior becomes obvious and bad behavior becomes impossible. If you don't see a snack, you don't eat it. If you don't bring your phone into the bedroom, you don't surf the internet at 1 a.m. If you leave your gym clothes right outside your door, it's hard to find an excuse to stay home. Stop challenging yourself to a battle you can avoid. Self-control is a short-term strategy, changing the environment is a long-term strategy. One day, I visited a temple in Japan. No doorman, no smoking sign, but no one smokes, no one does anything wrong, no one leaves litter, no one needs reminding because of the environment there. The design, the sounds, the smell of the wood, the sound of the wind through the roof tiles, is a message in itself. You walk in and automatically live differently. Good habits don't have to be a battle. They may be a natural consequence of the environment you create. Start over where you are. If you want to read a book, put it in the most visible place. If you want to learn a foreign language, stick vocabulary words on your bathroom mirror. If you want to write, open your computer with a prepared file as soon as you wake up. If you want to play music, put the piano in the middle of the room. If you want to eat healthy, display fruit on the table and hide the popcorn. Make good habits obvious. And if you really want to go further, write down every habit of your day from the moment you open your eyes until you turn off the lights to go to bed, naming each behavior in a neutral, non-judgmental way. Then next to each action mark. If that behavior helps you become the person you want to be, if it pulls you away from that image, or if it's neutral, it doesn't matter. This is an extremely powerful tool. I call it habit roll call. It makes the unconscious conscious. It helps you see yourself in your most raw and honest version. You can't change what you don't perceive. And once you've seen it, you see and unsee it. Law 2, attractive makes habits attractive. In 1954, two researchers named O and Miner accidentally discovered a button that could make rats addicted. They implanted an electrode into the rat's brain and somehow it hit the right spot that produces the pleasure chemical dopamine. Every time the mouse pressed the lever, its brain exploded with joy. It repeats itself over and over, skipping meals, skipping sleep, skipping sex partners just to press the button. It clicks 7,000 times an hour and dies of exhaustion. I tell you this not to say that humans are like rats, but to emphasize. We act not because of the results but because of the feeling we attach to the results. We don't eat cake because we need calories. We eat for the sweet, fatty feeling that flows on our tongues like a short reward for a long, tiring day. We don't surf TikTok because we need knowledge, we surf because we feel surprised, excited, and curious. Dopamine rises like a wave and we drift with it. It is the feeling we expect that motivates behavior, not the behavior itself. This is important because it helps us understand. For a habit to be maintained, it must arouse a compelling desire. What makes a habit memorable? Not the logic, not the long-term benefits, but does it make you crave it? Smokers don't smoke because they need the nicotine, but because they crave the relief they get after taking a puff. People run regularly not only for their health but also for the euphoric feeling that comes after. Each time the threshold is exceeded. So if you want a good habit to become sustainable, you can't let it dry up. You need to make it sexier. The first way I discovered this was through the reward pairing strategy. For example, you love watching Netflix but want to form a habit of cycling in place. Then just watch Netflix while cycling. You pair something you want with something you should do. Like me, I'm addicted to podcasts, but I also need to do cardio. I decided to just listen to my favorite podcast while I ran. So my brain started to see running as a way to do something I love, instead of an obligation to endure. Humans learn through association. You listen to a song when you are heartbroken. After that, every time the music started, your heart would contract. You smell delicious cookies in the house. You remember those childhood afternoons with your grandmother. You attach memories to feelings. Take advantage of that mechanism. If you want to do something more regularly, tie it to something you love. To reduce procrastination, create a cue that makes the behavior harder to resist. Instead of writing exercise to be healthy, something distant and vague. Attach it to me and I'll be able to listen to my favorite music while I run. Or I'll drink a special smoothie only after I finish my workout. Or I'll allow myself 15 minutes of gaming. But only after completing the article. Attraction doesn't always come from the behavior itself, but it can be created by building new associations. We do not live in a vacuum. Every behavior is influenced not only by feelings but also by the people around. I once worked with a student who was passionate about design. He lives in a dorm full of gamers. People who do not care about studying, do not care about creativity. At first he kept his motivation. But a few months later, I saw him gradually give up his design habit and switch to playing games all night. Why? Because we are imitating creatures. We mimic the behavior of 3 groups of people. 1. Close people. 2. People like me. 3. The people we admire. I'm not saying you need to stay away from all your friends just because they have bad habits. But you need to understand, society is a gravitational force. If you go against the prevailing behavior in the group, you will get tired. If you blend in, you will drift away without realizing it. So, if you want lasting change, find a group of people for whom the behavior you want to become is normal. I used to join a small gym where no one showed off their muscles, no one took selfies in the mirror, but they came regularly. They don't need motivation, they don't need slogans, they just come to practice and leave. Their regularity draws me along. It shows me that working out every morning is a given here. And gradually I stopped forcing myself. I come to work out not to achieve a goal but because it's what people like me do. The society you choose doesn't just create environment, it creates identity. And then you will see a strange thing happen. You don't have to fight old habits. You just need to make the new behavior more attractive in the current context. For example, you can't change the genes that make you like sweets, but you can change how you respond to signals. If you always snack when you're sad, replace it with some light exercise. If you find yourself surfing the web when you're bored, try listening to a short podcast or doodling in a notebook instead. Initially, the replacement behavior will be forced. But if you combine it with the right reward, a little bit of pamin, a little bit of fun, a little bit of pride, it will gradually become the default behavior. There is a technique I often use when faced with temptation. I call it reframing behavior. Instead of thinking I have to eat healthy, think of me eating things that make my body feel light and alert instead of thinking I have to read books instead of surfing the net. Think I get to discover things that put others to sleep. The brain is very sensitive to wording that makes you feel pressured. The word suggests freedom. You stop doing the right thing because of fear. You do it because you want to. Finally, don't forget one thing. A bad habit is not the enemy. It's just the wrong solution to a right need. You smoke not because you enjoy the smoke but because you need stress relief. You surf the net not because you love drama but because you lack connection. You overeat not because you are hungry but because you need to feel loved and comforted. So don't just try to break the habit. Find the deeper need underneath and fill it with a better solution. I used to have a friend who every night after work would pull out a can of beer and sigh. It lasted for 5 years to the point where just hearing the hissing sound when the cap was opened would make his body relax immediately. One day, he tried replacing beer with a cup of hot chamomile tea and at first felt no difference except a feeling of absence. But he did not give up. He boiled tea, poured it into a thick porcelain cup, and sat down on the same old chair. Turn on the familiar soft music and then the familiar sequence becomes the reward. After a few weeks, the sound of boiling water began to take effect, and the steam from the tea rose as a new signal. Dopamine doesn't come from alcohol, it comes from recognition. It's time to relax. A ritual is recreated, an old behavior is transformed simply by making the new reward more attractive. So instead of trying to resist a bad habit, ask yourself what it's doing for you and then find ways to help yourself better without betraying that need. When you understand the underlying reasons behind the behavior, you no longer see it as an enemy to be eliminated. You see it as a bridge to another solution that is safer, kinder to yourself. And it is there that change begins to become humane. A behavior becomes attractive not because of its nature but because of the meaning you assign to it. And the great thing is you have the power to redefine what that means. You can turn each time you write in your journal into a way to talk to yourself. You can see reading not as an exercise in thinking but as a way to escape into worlds you have never lived in. You might think of jogging not as a way to lose weight but as a way to get 30 minutes in your day. You don't have to please anyone but yourself. When a habit is associated with a compelling emotion, it is pulled into the depths of consciousness. It is no longer an action. It becomes a part of who you are. In short, for a habit to stick, you need to make it engaging. And attraction is the result of 3 things. 1. You pair that behavior with a reward you actually want. 2. You associate yourself with a group of people who see that behavior as normal. 3. You understand that the behavior meets a deep need and you proactively respond to it in a better way. You can't fool yourself with empty calls to be better. You can only go the long way if you actually like the feeling that comes from the behavior you are maintaining. And if you don't like it now, create a more lovable version. Let's dress it in a softer, more fragrant, more intimate shirt. One day you'll look back and see, oh, so what I thought was effort. Now it's become fun. Law 3, make it easy, makes habits easy to do. When I started this journey, I had no idea I was building a book. I just know I'm typing. 1 post a week, sometimes an anonymous blog post, a few hundred views, sometimes a post no one reads but me. But I write not because I am good, but because I repeat. You may be better than me, but if you write once a month and I write once a week, over time I will win. Not by nature but by frequency. That's what I learned in my Bachelor of Fine Arts program. 2 groups of students were given the task of creating an outstanding photographic work. Group A was required. Just submit 1 photo but it must be perfect. Group B must take 100 photos, quality doesn't matter. Guess which group created the best photo? Group B. Because while Group A is absorbed in theory, Group B takes action and through action they make progress. We are often tempted by perfection, but it kills progress. You don't need to be perfect, you need to start. And to start easy, you need to make the behavior as light as a lift of your hand. I used to think that to change, you need determination. But what you really need is less friction. What does it mean? Meaning wanting to exercise more, leaving running shoes by the door, wanting to write more regularly. Pre-open the document you, rewriting so it appears as soon as you turn on your computer. Want to read a book, put it on the pillow every morning. Want to cook healthy, cut vegetables the night before. Every small step you take shortens the distance from intention to behavior. Good habits should be as easy as sliding down a slope. Bad habits should be as difficult as climbing a mountain. I call this the law of least effort. People do not always choose the best. They choose what is most convenient. That's why you grab snacks. Because it's close. The reason you watch YouTube is because it's open. The reason you don't exercise is because you have to change, you have to leave the house. Too many steps to find exercises. Make the behavior you want fewer steps and make the behavior you want to avoid more complex. I once helped a girl break her habit of checking social media by moving apps off the home screen, removing automatic passwords, and installing software that forced her to wait 10 seconds before opening an app. That's it, 10 seconds. But with those 10 seconds, she has time to think. Dopamine no longer wins immediately, behavior is no longer automatic. And then it faded away. We often imagine change as a big deal. I have to practice 1 hour every day, write 1,000 words, and eat a strict diet. But it's those great expectations that scare you. Forget it. Start with something so easy you can't make excuses. I call it the 2-minute rule. Every good habit can be reduced to a behavior that takes place in the first 2 minutes. Read a book every day, open a book and read a passage. Practice yoga every morning until the mat is on the floor. Write every day by turning on the computer and typing a sentence. Run 3 kilometers to put on sports shoes. Your job is not to complete, but to show up. Because once you start, the rest happens automatically. Like walking into the ZM room. As long as you are there, you are more likely to practice, just like a guitar player. Just pick up the guitar and your fingers will automatically move to the strings. Habits are the result of initiated action, not of sustained will. You might think, but what difference does 2 minutes make? I asked back. Have you done that every day? Because if you can't do the little things consistently, you'll never be able to sustain the big things. The small repetitive behavior is the first vote you cast for your new identity. And when you do that day in and day out, the small becomes big, the simple becomes natural, the difficult becomes easy. You don't have to start strong, you just have to start. I once coached an entrepreneur who could never read more than 3 pages of a book. He always said, "I'm too busy." I suggest you try reading a passage. Exactly 1 paragraph. Every morning while making coffee. A week later, he finished reading 3 chapters. Because when you shorten a habit to 2 minutes, you remove the barrier. And when the habit becomes easy, you don't have to force yourself anymore. You just go with it. But one more thing, repetition is the measure of success, not perfection. How you do it every day is more important than how well you do it. A bad but regular workout. Still better than a rare but excellent exercise. A scribbled diary entry every day is better than a thesis you never start. Stop measuring by results. Start measuring by how many times you show up. I use a simple system to keep track of my streak points. Every time I complete a habit, no matter how small, I record it. It could be marking it on the calendar, it could be jotting down a number, it could be pressing a button on an app. But what's important is not the tool, but the feeling you're accumulating. And then you don't want to break the chain. Because that string of just a few scribbled numbers is proof. I'm becoming someone else, but someday you'll miss me. Maybe it's because of illness, maybe it's because of work, maybe life throws something unexpected at you. That is normal for everyone. Me too. The difference is never miss twice in a row. The first time is an accident, the second time is the beginning of a new habit. The habit of giving up. Make your own rules. Regardless, I'll be back tomorrow. You can practice for 10 minutes, write a line, or read half a page. The goal is not performance, the goal is to keep the flow. When you understand that small actions lead to big success, you will stop comparing yourself to others and start walking with yourself. But there is a higher level, habit automation. You don't just want to make the habit easier, you want to make it almost impossible not to do. For example, you sign up for monthly tuition so you don't have to decide one time at a time. You buy fruit delivered to your home regularly. To avoid remembering, you install an app that blocks social media during work hours. To avoid resistance. When you design your environment so that good behavior happens automatically, you reduce the number of choices you have to make, and the fewer choices you have to make, the less fatigue you experience, the less procrastination you experience, and the less failure you experience. Let the system win instead of your will and you will see something interesting. Good habits don't need to get stronger. They just need less interference. A stream is not as strong as the rock, but it overcomes the rock because it never stops flowing. It doesn't butt its head against the rock, it dodges, it waits, it repeats. You too. You don't have to be stronger to change. You just need softer, more even, easier. You may not be good enough today, determined enough, smart enough, rich enough. But if you show up, repeat, and make the behavior so easy that it's impossible not to do it, you're living the principles of the best in the world. Results don't come from explosions, they come from accumulation. The 4 satisfy rules make habits satisfying. An Oregon boy was abandoned at the age of 9. Parents are drug addicts. He rolled around in strangers' houses, surviving by stealing. By the age of 14, he was skipping school, running away from home, and addicted to heroin. By the time he was 18, he was in jail. And then a little thing happened in the closet, he started cleaning the bathroom. No one is wrong, no one is rewarded. It's just that you feel good when everything is clean. Then he continued cleaning the cell, the floor, the table, and until someone noticed. When he was released from prison, people realized he had a strange ability. After completing the cleaning with real joy, a boss hired him to clean the warehouse, then promoted him, then supported him, and finally he owned the whole company. From a drugstore robber, he became the founder of a multi-million-dollar cleaning company. It all starts with a small feeling, the satisfaction of seeing a sparkling clean sink. That story kept me thinking. Sometimes change doesn't need a grand beginning, it just needs an immediate result that makes you feel good. Our body has a primitive but powerful operating principle. What is rewarded will be repeated, what is punished will be eliminated. Look at a child, you smile, it smiles back, you give it a cake, it remembers, you get angry, it cries. All logic, ethics, reason, discipline have no place. It all works on the principle of instant gratification. The problem is that in the modern world, most good habits don't come with an immediate reward of eating a salad. You don't feel better immediately when you exercise, your belly is still big, you learn French, no one compliments you for saying bon. Meanwhile, bad habits reward immediately. You eat cake, sweetness spreads in your mouth, you surf the net, dopamine flows tight, you procrastinate. Feel comfortable immediately. That's why bad behavior often wins. It plays by biological principles. Instant rewards lead to long-term consequences, want good habits to survive in the real world. You need to attach a reward to the behavior, it doesn't have to be a big reward, it doesn't have to be a gift. Just let that action end on a positive note. Even though I was very young, I wrote a diary every night, at first out of obligation. Later I placed a cup of my favorite tea right next to me and while writing, I sipped the warm, cinnamon-scented tea, the chrysanthemum-flavored tea, and the feeling of rest. Just that, and the behavior repeats. Someone asked me, how do you know a habit is working? I ask back, is it satisfying? If so, you don't need motivation, you don't need a reminder, you don't need an alarm, you just want to keep going. So instead of just focusing on the end goal, find ways to put joy in every action. I once worked with a woman who wanted to break a nail-biting habit. She tried everything, fake nails, gloves, she reminded herself every time she found nothing worked. Until she did something very strange, she applied bitter medicine on the tip of her fingernail. Every time she bit it, the bitter taste flooded her tongue, an immediate unpleasant feeling. Her brain reacted. This is wrong behavior. After a few weeks, the habit disappears. Bad behavior doesn't go away because of threats. It only disappears when it is associated with an unpleasant opposite consequence. Good behavior survives when rewarded. Even if it's just a tick, a look, a sense of reassurance, redesign the end of the behavior so that it's associated with a feeling of moving forward. We don't need anyone to cheer us on, but we are sensitive to the feeling of progress. When you put money in a piggy bank, every penny is a proof. When you cross out a box on the calendar, each box represents a step forward. When you record your 12th consecutive day of running, that number becomes a resource. We don't need applause, we just need to see ourselves moving forward. I used to have a small glass jar containing 100 colored stones. Every time I finish an article, I drop a pill into the jar. The sound is soft, the feel is specific, tangible, the kick is solid. I see the journey is no longer vague. You can do the same with any habit that counts consecutive days. Mark on the wall, keep track with a notebook. Use reminders, it's not the tool that matters but the immediate feedback. It makes your brain understand, oh, this behavior is worth repeating, but don't just build rewards into the behavior, build responsibility into it. It sounds harsh, but I'm serious, having someone know you're trying to make change happen makes it more obvious. We often break promises to ourselves but are very afraid to break promises to others. Find a travel partner. Not to monitor but to let you know. Someone is watching you grow up. I used to have a friend named Brian. Every Monday, we had a 15-minute phone call where we didn't discuss work, but just asked each other, did you do what you said you would last week? What made you fail? What behavior are you choosing to do better this week? 3 questions. 15 minutes and the change gradually takes shape. The truth is, habits don't form in silence. They live better when someone sees, someone believes in you, someone who isn't surprised to see you getting better. So let's be a little public. Let your good deeds be a story someone tells. Not because you need to be famous, but because you want to live with witness. When you have a companion, you are no longer alone in your battle with yourself. Every good deed witnessed and recognized becomes a tangible step forward. They do not need rewards, do not need praise. Sometimes it's just a look that tells me I see you. And so you can't turn back easily. I once saw a woman lose 20 kilograms not because of iron discipline but because she joined a support group. Each week they send in meal photos, recount misses, share small victories. None of them are nutrition experts, but they become mirrors to help each other see where they are. Social responsibility, no matter how small, has a weight that far exceeds personal goals. And then you realize a paradox, the more behavior becomes proud. You do and want to break it all the more. No one wants to skip brushing their teeth when they know they have been doing it regularly for 6 months. No one wants to skip exercise today. When you have 43 consecutive days without a break, no one wants to miss once. When you feel like you're living up to the image you hold dear, it's no longer about achievement, it's about identity. But if you do slip up, forgive quickly, come back faster. Don't let one bad day ruin a long streak. Don't let a small slip turn into a breakdown. Remember, you are not running a race, you are walking a race, and the winner is not the one who reaches the finish line first but the one who keeps walking. When others stopped, I asked a friend, a well-known trainer in the industry, what do you find common among your most successful students? He doesn't talk about fitness, he doesn't talk about nutrition, he doesn't talk about willpower. He just said they don't give up. When they are interrupted, they come back early, and when they come back, they don't start over from the starting line. They just pick up where they left off. There are no miracles, only comebacks. And here you can see the whole system I built revolves around one thing: making habits clear, attractive, easy, satisfying. Each law is part of a circle. Clear signal leads you to see. Attractive behavior leads to wanting. The action step is easy for you to do. A satisfying ending leaves you wanting more. It's not a formula, it's the biological structure we've lived with since the beginning of time. What makes us hunt, survive, learn, love, live, and continue to evolve. So why not use it to reprogram yourself? You don't need to change your whole life tomorrow. You simply change one behavior and make it worth repeating every time you complete it. Close that behavior with a feeling you want to remember a word in your head. A high five to a fellow traveler. A look in the mirror where you feel comfortable with yourself. Habits don't have to be forced if you know how to make them fun. Advanced strategy tactic final rule. I used to think I would become a professional athlete. But then one day I met a man who was almost 20 centimeters taller than me, with arms as long as a seagull's wings, running as fast as if there was no gravity on the ground. That's when I understood. There are things you can't practice. Genes does not decide everything. But genes shape your limits. If you are 158 tall, you can play basketball, but it is difficult to become LeBron James. If you have a short arm span, you can still swim well, but it won't be easy to beat microps. And if you're an introvert, being on stage every day will drain you twice as much energy as a natural extrovert. This is not pessimism, this is the truth. And understand this truth. You no longer waste time competing where you are at a disadvantage. You begin to find the land that suits your nature. I don't know if I have a talent for writing, but I do know one thing: I find joy in sitting down to type. While many people find writing a burden, I find it a way to think better. I can write for hours without getting bored. That comfort is the sign. A signal that says, hey, maybe this is something that fits your psychological makeup. When you find a behavior that pleases you, fits you, and nourishes you, that's when the habit becomes sustainable without force. They say, practice makes perfect. I say, practice where you have the best chance of being the best. Don't try to be a violinist if you hate violins. Don't try to be a CEO if you don't like negotiating. Don't run where other people are genetically blessed and you're not. Find the sweet spot. 1. You're good at it. 2. You like it. 3. You're easy to maintain. That's where it's not the loudest. That's where you'll find what you're looking for. And once you're in the right place, the next question is, how do you stay motivated? If you've ever played a video game, you know that weird feeling where the closer you get to winning, the more you play, the closer you get to a high score, the more reluctant you are to stop. Because you've entered a state called the sweet spot. There, the challenge is not too easy, you're not bored, not too hard, you're not charging. It's in the middle of just the right difficulty. I call it the Goldilocks rule. Inspired by the story of the little blonde girl who tried 3 bowls of porridge. One was too hot, one was too cool, only the 3rd bowl is enough. The brain is the same, it craves challenge, but enough challenge that you feel like you're making progress, not drowning. Think about the last time you learned something new. If it was too easy, you skipped. If it was too hard, you avoided it. Only when it was just right, making you stretch but not break, did you really engage. This state, when sustained, is called flow. And flow doesn't come from a place of comfort. It comes from a place where you're reaching, trembling, but still have a chance to win. That's why the best habit perseverers don't do the same thing over and over again. They vary it. They run the same distance but add a little more pace. They write in the same genre but try a different structure. They read the same authors, but switch to new topics little by little. They push the boundaries little by little. They keep themselves from getting bored. Because boredom is the biggest enemy of habit, not pain, not fatigue, but endless repetition. It makes you feel nothing anymore. I had a reader named Alex who ran every morning for 100 consecutive days, and on the 101st day he stopped. I asked him why. He said, "I don't know what I'm running for anymore." That's the clearest manifestation of lack of feedback. Imagine playing a game without a score, learning an instrument without sound, writing without anyone reading, working out without any change. When your behavior doesn't create an emotional response, you lose motivation. So measure, don't be a perfectionist. Just know where you're going and whether what you're doing is making a small difference. But sometimes you go too far. Some people start with good goals, do yoga because they want to be healthy and then become obsessed with their muscles. Some people write a diary to heal and then turn it into a self-control machine to the point of not being able to breathe. Some people learn languages because they love them and then lose their joy because they're obsessed with their scores. Because every habit can become a prison if you don't let go. It's the little talked about dark side of habit. When you're good at something, you'll be tempted to stick with it forever. You can fall into a subtle trap of efficiency. You write in a certain style because it's popular. You do the same exercises because they get results. You live in a certain way because it's proven. But then one day you stop improving. You just repeat and repeat without new challenges, leading to hidden stagnation. That stagnation doesn't hurt. It doesn't scream in your head, it just seeps in like an anesthetic, making you vaguely wonder if you're living or just maintaining a mechanism. Be careful. When a habit becomes a fixed identity, it's hard to change even when you know you need to. That's why I always say, identity is a place to start, not a place to be confined. Be willing to let go of a part of your old identity if it no longer serves you. Ask yourself, is this habit still helping me move forward? It's keeping me in the comfort zone. Am I willing to try again? With the naivety of a novice, I was a guy who wrote a blog every week. Then I wrote a book, then I taught. But I always come back to the same question. Am I doing this because I choose to or because I'm afraid to try something new? Once I tried to rewrite the whole workflow, cut out what used to work, tried something that didn't work, the results weren't perfect. But I felt alive again and I understood, evolution is not just about genes, it's about will, habits, and tools. It helps you create a better version of yourself. But you are not a tool of those habits. Use it as a launching pad, not a cage. Remember, you are the designer of the system, not a slave to it. And here we are. From my seemingly hopeless broken face to rebuilding a new life with small habits, from understanding how behavior works to using for the law to re-engineer all habits and hours. To master that system so that it doesn't control you, you don't have to start big, you just have to start small and repeat until no one doubts who you are. And if there's one thing I can leave you with, it's that every small action is a vote for the person you are choosing to become. Vote consistently. At some point you will become the winner. When I sit here writing these lines, I don't see myself as special. I don't have a phenomenal memory, I don't have iron discipline, I don't have an extraordinary journey. But I did one thing and repeated it long enough. And that's the biggest lesson I can share with you. You don't have to do big things, you just have to do small things, repeat and get better. When you see an athlete competing at the top, you see the results but you don't see the 10,000 hours of boring practice. When you admire an artist, you don't see the days when she drew bad drawings and didn't sell any. When you read a good book, you don't know that the writer deleted at least 30 previous drafts. We often admire the results and forget that everything starts with boring habits, repeated with love. And if you ask me what the secret to sustainable results is, I'll say this: love the process, not just the results. Design a system to live within the good behavior. Don't try to be perfect every day. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to get 1% better every day and let compound interest do the rest. At this point, I want you to remember the 4 laws of behavior change. The entire system this book is built on. 1. Make the habit obvious. Because if you don't see it, you won't notice it. 2. Make it attractive. Because your brain acts on feeling, not logic. 3. Make it easy, because people choose what's convenient first. 4th, make habits satisfying. Because what is rewarded is what is repeated. Look at every habit in your life through these 4 lenses. What can you add, remove, swap, redesign? Make a very small change and see what happens. If you are in business, apply habits to your team. Design an environment so that good behavior becomes the default. Create a system to track progress. Provide rapid feedback. Build a culture where good behavior is expected. No need for big rewards. If you are a parent, remember that your child learns not from what you say but from how you live. Make reading a habit in your home, not a command. Let your child see you take notes, learn, repeat, fail, and come back. Education is not about control. Education is about instilling behavior. And after all, if you find yourself not getting as good as you want, don't beat yourself up. Remember that all real progress looks slow. It wasn't like an explosion. It was like a thaw. And then at 32 degrees, the first drop finally fell. I want to say thank you. Thank you to the first readers who read every single crooked blog post I wrote in 2012. Thank you to the people who wrote letters describing their journeys. The depressed person who learned to come back from a small gesture. The game addict who learned to deactivate dopamine by changing their environment. The single mother who created a nightly reading time with her child in the cozy chair in the corner. Thank you, who is holding this book. Because you didn't choose the easy path, you chose the path of living with intention. I don't know who you are, but I believe that if you continue to vote for who you want to be, you will wake up one day and find yourself living that person. We have been on a journey together that is not linear, not rushed, and not as bright as fireworks on New Year's Eve. It is more like planting a seed in the ground, not knowing when it will sprout, but you still water it every day. Not because you are sure it will bloom, but because you believe that watering is the right thing to do. I want to stop here not because there is nothing more to say, but because everything worth saying. You have seen it in your own life. If you are sitting still, nodding your head slightly, remembering a small habit you once changed and it changed the course of your life, then I don't need to say anything more. Thank you for going all the way. It is not easy. Not because this book is long or difficult, but because listening to something to the end. In a world of impatience and chaos is a rare act. Your attention is a gift and I do not take it lightly. You have taken the time not only to listen, but also to stop, to think, to compare the principles given in this book with real life. Life often does not work according to theory, but there is always room for a small action if it is repeated long enough. Now I have a suggestion. If this book has leave you anything meaningful, a thought, a small action, a silent but powerful change, please share it. Leave a review, no need for praise. I don't need nice words. I need honesty. What have you tried from this book? What didn't work for you? What did you find hardest to start? What are you planning to do tomorrow? Because of what you heard today, each of your comments will not only help me but also help others like you who are wondering if they can change. Tell them. I used to think I couldn't, but I started small. And then I found myself changing. That's how a community is created, not by forums, not by social media, but by the silences between people. The whispers that you are not alone. We don't change by a moment of clarity. We change by repetitions that we are brave enough not to give up. Thank you for not giving up. At least until this last page.